When soldiers found themselves cut off from supply lines, surrounded by bitter cold, and facing nights where exposed skin could freeze in minutes. They didn't have the luxury of modern tents, thermal sleeping bags, or synthetic insulation. Yet, many of them survived brutal winters that stretched from the frozen forests of Eastern Europe to the rugged mountains of Italy. And they did it using nothing more than soil, snow, fallen timber, and sheer ingenuity. These forgotten World War II shelter-building tricks weren't just desperate improvisations. They were refined in the harshest environments on Earth and became life-saving lessons in engineering that modern survivalists can still learn from today. What surprises most people is how effective these old techniques really were. In many situations, they outperformed today's commercial camping gear when it came to retaining warmth, staying hidden, and withstanding harsh weather. Soldiers learned quickly that when the enemy controlled the skies, a simple tent could be a death sentence. The silhouette alone could reveal a position to enemy aircraft or artillery. So instead of building upward, they built downward. A trench barely 2 feet deep became the foundation for a dugotello, insulated shelter roofed with logs, branches, and finally a thick, heavy layer of earth. That roof could stop shrapnel, shed rain, and blend entirely into the landscape. From above, it was almost invisible, just another patch of dirt or snow. The process was simple but ingenious. After digging a trench wide enough to lie down in, soldiers laid planks, saplings, or anything wooden across the top sometimes. Even broken rifle crates scavenged from the battlefield. Over that went branches, brush, and finally a foot or more of packed soil. The result was a structure capable of holding warmth, far better than canvas. Even under heavy snowfall, these dugouts maintained a stable temperature thanks to the insulating power of earth and wood. In the middle of war, in the dead of winter, these shelters became literal lifelines. And for today's survivalists, the principle still holds. In a woodland or a cold environment, the ground itself is your greatest ally. A shallow pit, a wooden roof, and a thick layer of soil or snow can outperform a tent. When temperatures plunge or when stealth is essential, snow, too, was never the enemy. In fact, soldiers learned one of nature's strangest truths. Snow doesn't just freeze, it insulates. That's why snow caves became one of the most effective emergency shelters ever invented. With nothing more than an entrenching tool or even a helmet, a soldier could carve out a hollow in a deep drift, making a space just big enough to sit or lie down. Inside that icy cocoon, the temperature stayed surprisingly stable, often hovering around freezing, even when the outside world plunged far below zero. It might not sound warm, but in survival situations, the difference is life-saving. A small vent hole at the top kept the air flowing, and the entrance was never fully sealed to prevent suffocation. A single candle or even just body heat was enough to make it bearable. Modern survivors still use this technique today. In a blizzard, fighting the snow wastes energy. Using it can save your life. In the dense forests of Europe, nature itself provided shelter. Fallen trees and exposed root systems created natural bunkers soldiers quickly learned to exploit. When a tree tipped over from frost, explosions, or storms, it often exposed a hollow space beneath the roots. Soldiers turned these cavities into windproof, hidden shelters. They lined the interior with bark or fabric, sealed the gaps with mud, and camouflaged the opening with branches and snow. The tangled root mass above acted as a thick, natural roof, reinforced by soil and wood. These shelters blended perfectly into the environment, nearly impossible to spot, unless you were standing directly on top of them. For modern survivalists, a fallen tree isn't just debris, it's a ready-made structural frame waiting to be transformed. But perhaps the most important lesson the soldiers learned was that heat is better trapped underground than under canvas. Tents of that era were notorious for leaking warmth. Wind cut right through them. Condensation soaked the fabric, and every degree of heat escaped into the night air. So soldiers experimented with half dugouts, sinking just deep enough to get below the frost line. Even a couple of feet underground, soil maintains a far more stable temperature. By partially burying the shelter, they drastically reduced exposure to the wind and could heat the interior with nothing more than body warmth, or a small, makeshift stove made from tin cans or ammunition boxers. Smoke was piped out through a narrow vent trench, that released it far from the shelter, eliminating visible plumes that could give away their position. Warmth radiated through the dirt, creating a surprisingly comfortable microclimate beneath the frozen surface. For preppers and off-grid builders today, this approach remains invaluable. Semi-buried shelters are far easier to heat and far harder to detect than surface tents or cabins. Add a reflective layer like an emergency blanket under the roof, and the efficiency increases dramatically. The soldiers who survived the longest warranty, the ones with the most gear, they were the ones who understood materials. They mastered layering long before the term appeared in survival manuals. A sturdy frame of wood for structure, brush or branches for air gaps, mud or snow for insulation, and cloth or canvas for windproofing. Even the floor received careful attention. Dry grass, pine needles, spare sex, anything to lift the body off cold ground. This layered approach prevented heat loss through conduction and created a stable environment, even in savage winter conditions. Modern campers often forget this simplicity, but the principle holds. Shelter isn't built from a single material. It's built from layers that trap air, block wind, and retain warmth. In the end, the soldiers of World War II were forced to learn what their lives depended on. Survival isn't about fancy gear. It's about understanding physics, material behavior, and the natural world around you. Their shelters were born from desperation but refined through necessity, tested under bombardment, and proven in nights where failure meant death. They left behind not just stories, but a library of forgotten techniques that can still save lives today. If you found value in these forgotten World War II shelter building secrets, share them. Because one day, knowing how to use soil, snow, wood, and ingenuity might mean surviving the next cold night.